Ford versus Kavanaugh. A spellbinding Supreme Court confirmation rivets the country. As allegations, denials, and counterclaims fly, a torn nation ponders who to believe and whether the partisan quest for power has corrupted the process. Here in Texas, a gubernatorial debate with the Democratic challenger accusing Greg Abbott of hoarding rainy day billions while Harvey victims suffer. In the Bayou City, the battle over the drainage fee unfolds, with critics calling Rebuild Houston a slush fund for the mayor. Who should voters believe? And on Galveston Bay, responsibility for a toxic dump revealed. What can really be done to minimize the threat when our government created the problem? I'm Greg Grugan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, Republican strategist Jessica Colon. Next up, progressive commentator and attorney Nyanza Moore. In the 3 spot, Bob Price, associate editor of Breitbart, Texas. Batting cleanup, longtime super neighborhood leader Tomaro Bell. Next up, businessman, columnist, and former Kemah mayor Bill King. And closing us out on the hot corner, Chicano activist and educator Tony Diaz. Let's do this. 100%. Christine Blasey-Ford claims she is 100% sure Brett Kavanaugh attempted to rape her 36 years ago. 100%. That's the level of innocence the nominee claims in regard to Ford and any other woman alleging sexual assault against him.
I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling.
Never sexually assaulted anyone. Not in high school, not in college, not ever.
Clearly, someone did not tell the truth. In an extraordinary hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, an event now ferociously carved into the nation's history, pursuit of truth collided with pursuit of power, and it's absolutely fair to say the full truth did not prevail. Republicans, including Kavanaugh, accused Democrats of a vicious political hit job launched as a last resort, bent on keeping the Supreme Court seat vacant until after the midterms. Democrats accused Republicans of disrespecting generations of traumatized women by steamrolling a flawed candidate through confirmation without benefit of an FBI investigation into credible allegations of criminal behavior. While Ms. Ford's testimony was, in the president's words, compelling, as of this moment, there is not a single witness from that night in 1982 willing to support her story. Emblematic of the anger and frustration generated this week, the rant unleashed by South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham.
You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsey said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy.
By Friday afternoon, President Trump felt obligated to order a supplemental FBI investigation ahead of a final vote to confirm Kavanaugh. I'm going to go with Jessica Colon. Your thoughts?
What we saw and what we have been seeing throughout this entire confirmation hearing is the worst case of the ends justify the means. We are seeing the Democrats go to any length to push this nomination and confirmation until after the elections. What we saw this week and on Thursday that nobody could tear their eyes away from were 2 victims. We saw a scarred woman, and we saw a man who clearly showed he was wronged and not caught. And what was laid out was the political case for exactly what is going on between Kavanaugh's testimony and what we just saw from Senator Graham. And what we have here is a situation where the Senator Feinstein had this information in July. We talked about this last week. And when she had Brett Kavanaugh in her very office, she's the ranking member of this committee. So when people say during these testimonies and these hearings, the ranking member, that's Dianne Feinstein. She had him in her office. She did not bring it up to him then. She had already referred an attorney to Dr. Ford. She did not bring it up during his entire hearing. She waited until the very last minute as a political, as a political hit. The bottom line here, there is no transparency on the Democrat side. They have not participated in the investigation. They have not participated on these phone calls. Now we have this FBI investigation. Bring it forward and let the truth come out.
Nyanza Moore, what you read, and I want your perspective also as someone has defended people, and Kavanaugh is under fire.
So Kavanaugh is under fire. He's applying for a job, and the job has wonderful benefits, but this is one of the steps that you have to go through. I'm not sure in any interviewee situation, a time where you can yell at the person interviewing you. I've never been in an interview where I felt compelled or had the right to ask a question back, like, have you ever blacked out from drinking? I don't know, have you? I've never been in an interview where I was aggressive or I began to get hot under my collar. But let's talk about temperament. Temperament is not the only thing that's necessary to become a Supreme Court justice. And I think that after Kavanaugh's interview, you have to think about it. Dr. Ford had counsel. Her counsel prepped her and advised her on how to stay calm. Dr. Ford is not a lawyer. So to be balanced for Brett Kavanaugh, you have to think about it like this. Brett Kavanaugh is a U.S. judge. He's a federal judge. He's not going to look to another attorney to tell him how to be measured in his speech. He's going to speak with passion for the job that he is fighting for his life. So let's not waste so much on temperament as far as credibility. So when you're talking about something where you're fighting for your life, you're going to get excited. Maybe it wasn't the best move, but that's not the most important move. What's the most important thing that happened was that we had 2 women block Jeff Flake on the way into the elevator. And we also had Dianne Feinstein. Whether or not she had allowed an attorney to be referred to Dr. Ford, it doesn't really matter, because this is a test of credibility. The Senate is not there to see whether or not someone actually told the truth, because they're not going to lock anyone up. They're actually trying to see who's credible. For the women who feel like they have been wronged because they've not been able to say their piece, this is exactly why the Me Too movement has made so much traction, because those women, it took 3 women, a second woman after Dr. Ford to make a claim who's now going to be investigated as well, and 2 women at the elevator to go ahead and confront Jeff Flake. And thank God there is a Republican that when confronted face to face by women, he will let his emotions and his heart take the lead. And that's why we have an FBI investigation.
Bob Price, you've seen despicable moments in American government before. How does this rate?
12 out of 10. This is absolutely the worst political theater that I've ever seen in my life. I don't know of anybody that's ever sat for a job interview having waited 10 days of having their character smeared in the national news media before that interview. I can't fault the judge at all for being angry, especially with the ranking member who had him one-on-one in his office and could have handled this privately, but instead either she or someone in her office apparently leaked this document that the victim, Dr. Ford, had requested remain confidential. There were ways to handle that where her identity, as all rape victims should be, identity kept private. That should never have gone public. It was a horrific situation. The only good news that came out of this thing, if there is any such thing as good news, is that the National Rape and Incest Reporting Network saw a 200% increase in calls coming into them of victims coming forward. That is a good thing, but what happened on this stage was horrible.
Tomorrow, I've been waiting all week to hear what you thought of what went down in Washington.
To say that this is the worst thing that ever happened, obviously people never watched Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas, because that was the first time in the history of a confirmation that something like that had come up. So to say that this is the worst, I don't know what they're looking at to qualify how this is worse than what happened then. Because when Anita Hill came forth, what those senators said to her, I don't know if she was on muscle relaxers or what, that kept her calm and kept her cool, because there's no way I could have, through the accusations they were throwing at her. I'm sure.
I believe that.
Exactly. They would have had to get TSA, National Guard, whatever, off of me, off of them for the way they treated her. Now, they didn't step to Dr. Ford the way they came to Anita Hill, asking her, is this her fantasy? Is this something, do you want to have, they didn't do that one time. And for Lindsey Graham to be so damn dramatic, oh man, I mean, talk about the dramatics and the waterworks. Oh my goodness, he got on my nerve. My thing is this. I'm glad Dr. Ford did this. I'm very, very proud of her for doing this because just of what Bob said happened. It gave other people the strength. My problem is that what I fear the results are going to be may shut them all down after that. Okay, that is my fear.
We're going to talk more when we come back. I want to hear from both Bill and Tony. All right, when we return, it's been painful and divisive. So what kind of mark will the Kavanaugh confirmation leave on America moving forward? Stay with us.